Hello. All right, in this video, we're finally getting to the tyrants who ruled, who ruled Athens for a period of time in the late 6th century BC. So this group of tyrants are known as the Pistastratids because they represent the family of Pistastratus. It's really just a man named Pistastratus, and then his two sons briefly succeed him, I guess for about 15 years. And so we'll talk about each of these guys in turn, starting with Pistastratus. All right. So Pisistratus was a man living in the mid 6th century BC, seeing the tensions that existed in the city of Athens and realizing he could use those to make himself tyrant. We talked last time about the Solonian reforms, which attempted to solve the issues that were going on in Athens, but ultimately failed because they either went too far or didn't go far enough, depending on who you asked, and so they left still some strife in the city. And so Pisistratus, I mentioned last time, he tries a couple times to be tyrant, and it doesn't quite work the first two times. His first attempt is in 561 BC. Right, he seizes control. He has the support of the lower classes. Right, he is one of those tyrants who is a champion, who at least who styles himself as a champion of the people and the lower classes. And so with their support, he manages to seize control. But he is then ousted, right, by one of the opposing political party leaders, right, of a different faction that's going on in Athens. A guy named Megacles really leads the charge to oust him. Megacles then starts to have issues with his own party, his own faction, and so he invites Pisistratus back, and Pisistratus seems to return sometime around 559 BC, and he marries Megacles' daughter to seal this new alliance. So before Megacles helped drive him out, now he's asking for his help, and they ally themselves, and he marries Megacles' daughter. The story we're told is that he maybe not mistreated Megacles' daughter. We're told that Pisistratus already had two sons, and he did not want any more, so he supposedly did not sleep with Megacles' daughter properly, right? So whatever that means, you can guess. But the result is that Megacles was outraged at the treatment of his daughter, and he turned again on Pisistratus and expelled him a second time. And so this time Pisistratus was gone for more years. He spent that time gathering power. He got mercenaries, which is a common thing that tyrants or would-be tyrants do. And he returns to the city in 545 BC with these mercenary supporters. And so in this way, he's able to seize power, and this time he holds on to it. So a weird climb to power, but by 545 BC, Pisistratus is the tyrant of Athens. So Pisistratus is like most other tyrants that we see in the Archaic period, and he does the same kinds of things that they all do. First of all, he is styling himself as a champion of the people. He is going to fight aristocratic excess and help the lower classes. And so he does things like grabs the property of his enemies and distributes that land to the poor. Right, so he's sort of ousting, exiling, killing off some of the other aristocrats in Athens because they could represent a problem for him, the way Megacles' opposition was a problem for him before. And so he ousts them, and he takes some of their land and redistributes it to the very poor, who now get their own land instead of renting it. He also limits rent. He puts a law in that says you can't charge more than 1/20th of a person's yearly crop, whereas before it had been 1/6. So he puts those caps in place. He too is interested in encouraging trade, which Solon started, and other tyrants do as well. So he encourages pottery very much. He really pushes that pottery production, and around this time, Athens is going to start to take over Corinth as the leading exporter of pottery in the Aegean world. He forms trade alliances with other peoples in the Aegean so that those goods are being traded back and forth between Athens and other places. So Athenian goods are going to find markets. People are going to buy those things. And so we can be assured that wealth is going to flow into the city of Athens. He embarks on a number of building projects. Some of them are kind of infrastructure things. He, for instance, takes some of the private aristocratic wells. There were like literally wells in Athens that the aristocrats had claimed for their own, and he turns them into public fountain houses. So now anyone can come and draw water from them, and so that's also a sort of a symbolic gesture as well. He begins a temple to Athena on the Acropolis. He begins a temple to Olympian Zeus outside the Acropolis. The temple to Athena on the Acropolis, we'll mention briefly when we look at the buildings of the Acropolis. The temple to Olympian Zeus, he begins here, and it is not finished until the time of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, which would be in the late 2nd century AD. So that project takes a while. We talked about how they set up new religious festivals, and he introduces a festival called the Dionysia, which is celebrating the god Dionysus, a god of wine and revelry. He institutes chorus singing in honor of Dionysus, and this Dionysia festival and these kind of choral song competitions that are part of it will eventually transform into the beginnings of tragedy and comedy, right, which become parts of the Dionysia festival in Athens. He also adds to the Panathenaia. The Panathenaia is a yearly festival in Athens that celebrates the birthday of the goddess Athena, who is the patron of Athens, and that's existed for a while, but he adds new elements to it. He says, for instance, every 4 years we're going to have athletic games. People can come from all over. There will be prizes. He seems to also add recitations of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and it may be that this is the context where the Iliad and the Odyssey for the first time are really written down, so that there's like a definitive copy. This is what we recite at the Panathenaia, this version that we have. So yeah, he's encouraging this as well. So he's doing sort of all the things that tyrants do, and he is improving the lot of the poor and encouraging culture and improving the morale of the city. He dies, though, in 528 BC, and he is succeeded by his 2 sons. Okay, so 528 BC, Pistastratus dies, and his 2 sons take over. They rule together. His 2 sons are named Hippias and Hipparchus. All right. Hippias and Hipparchus start out okay. They are also kind of big patrons of culture, the arts, and poetry, and things like that. And then something happens that sort of turns them, well, at least turns Hippias. So Hippias, we are told, fell in love with a young man named Harmodius. But Harmodius rejected Hippias. In anger, Hippias said that Harmodius's sister could not take part as a basket holder in the procession at the Panathenaia. So this is just, it's the job that's given to young virginal women, and they carry some of the goods you need for the rites and the sacrifices in a big procession during the Panathenaia festival. And this is an insult because it suggests that Harmodius' sister is not a virgin, right? Which would be a big insult to her and to the family. And so Harmodius is so angry about that he goes to his actual lover, Aristogeiton, and they plan to depose and really execute, assassinate Hippias and Hipparchus. So Harmodius and Aristogeiton plan an assassination. Now the assassination does not go well. Things get messed up, right? And they end up killing Hipparchus, but they don't manage to get to Hippias. Hippias is still alive. So Hippias is able to capture Harmodius and Aristogeiton. Obviously, they are executed. And in the wake of this, in the wake of Hipparchus' assassination and the attempt on Hippias' life, Hippias becomes increasingly tyrannical. He's very paranoid that people are trying to kill him and to get him out of Athens, as you might imagine. And he is growing crueler and more tyrannical in his rule. And so the Athenians are now ready to get rid of their tyrants. And it's actually the Alcmaeonids who come in and save the day. Right? So remember, this Alcmaeonid family, they had been exiled. They're an aristocratic Eupatrid family of Athens. They had been exiled because one of their members had violated the sanctity of the sanctuary, right, during the would-be coup of Chilon. And so they've been living outside of Athens, but they've had their eye on returning, and they see this as their chance. The Alcmaeonids go to Sparta, which is known even now as a strong military polis, and they ask for aid in expelling Hippias. And Sparta agrees. The story is that Sparta went to the oracle at Delphi and asked what they should do, and the Alcmenids had essentially bribed the oracle to say, oh, you should absolutely help Athens. Right? So this is why Sparta helps, apparently. And so Sparta goes to Athens, and they oust Hipparchus. He lives, he flees. We'll meet him one more time. But in this way, the last of the Pistastratus and the tyrants are driven out of the city of Athens. Now, we said that in most cases, what happens after a tyrant leaves is that the aristocracy returns, but in a more moderated form. In this case, that will not happen, and instead, the Athenians are going to establish a new form of government known as democracy, but we're not going to get into that now. We're going to save that for a bit later. But that all happens, I should mention, in 510. In 510, Hippias is ousted by the Spartans, and the Athenians then will pivot to a democracy. All right, so thank you guys for watching.